This is the Lincoln Journal-Star editorial board. I'm editor Dave Bundy, and we are with Senator Carol Blood, who is Democratic candidate for governor, and we just lost Kent, so this will be even more fun. He'll be back in a second, I'm sure, Senator. He's got a cat that might have jumped, and well, he'll blame it on the cat. Just watch.
All right, there he is.
All right. Kent, welcome back. Did your cat have something to do with you losing your connection?
Yes, it did.
All right, I told you. Okay, well, I'm the editor at the Journal-Star. Kent, I'll let you introduce yourself, and then Senator Blood will let you introduce yourself because you're the guest of honor. So, Kent, go right ahead.
I'm Kent Walgamot. I write about arts and entertainment, but for the purposes here, I've been on the editorial board for over a decade.
Wow.
Okay, so Senator, we will let you start off with sort of an introduction of yourself, and then you can launch into the first question, which you'll probably recognize. You probably get it lots of places. Why do you want to be governor, and what experiences and attributes qualify you for the office?
All right, well, we'll just combine those two for time purposes.
Okay.
So my name is Senator Carol Blood. I currently represent District 3 in the Nebraska legislature, which means I represent parts of Bellevue and Papillion, Nebraska. Bellevue being the third largest city in the state of Nebraska, right next to Offutt Air Force Base. I was born in McCook, Nebraska, and raised on a farm outside of Hastings, Nebraska in Adams County. Our family farm is still a working farm, and that is in Clay Center, Nebraska. I moved to Eastern Nebraska in 1979, where I raised my family, and I have 3 adult children and 10 amazing grandchildren. I've known since 4th grade that I wanted to be a Nebraska state senator. That was when I took my 4th grade tour of the state capitol. In fact, there is sincerely a junior high newsletter somewhere that says, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I said, I wanted to be a Nebraska state senator. Didn't know they made $12,000 a year at that time, but I wanted to be a Nebraska state senator.
They probably made $12,000 a year back then, and you guys just haven't changed it. So.
I know, right? I don't know. So first for me, I had to raise my family. And I found myself, because I'm an independent contractor, working from home a lot, and I would listen to public access television and actually listen to the city council meetings. And I found myself yelling at the TV a lot. And it's like, you guys don't have a plan. What do you mean you don't know what you're going to build next year? What do you mean you don't know how you're going to pay for this? And the more research I did, I found out that we were a Dillon's Rule state, and that really it might be beneficial to my knowledge base to stay closer to home, first of all, for the kids, because by then I think my youngest was in high school, but to learn how there's a connection between state and local government. And so I ran for city council. There were 7 people in my primary. I was lucky enough to make it through the primary, and I served 8 years on the Bellevue City Council as the at-large representative, and I am now in my 2nd term in the Nebraska legislature. And so I have experience not only at the local level, but the state level as well. So for a living, I write business plans and feasibility assessments. If you've watched me on the legislative floor, you know I'm very pragmatic, and I believe in science, facts, and data. And so what I do for a living actually serves me very well as a policymaker. I had never planned on running for governor. I was going to stop because that was my dream, being a state senator. But watching the primary, I saw a lot of people throwing their hats in the ring that really were playing from the same playbook, and I didn't really hear anybody telling me what I needed to vote for, just what I should be voting against. And I didn't really hear solutions. You know, it seems like the last 20 years, especially 20, 25 years, you know, you hear a lot of rhetoric, you hear party speaking points on both sides, but you don't say, here's a problem, which is really an opportunity, and this is how I want to fix it. And I decided I want to be the adult in the room. I decided it was time for a change at the very least. I want to move the needle to show people that There are those of us that can campaign without ever going dirty. And that the average Joe on the street can run for public office, even when you're running against a millionaire. And so it really is my hope that we can start moving the needle towards more what I believe was the Nebraska way growing up. And so my competitive advantage is that I have a plan.
All right. Well, you got a little bit into this already, but the second question is, you know, we are a divided nation. It feels like right now we are a divided state. If elected, you're going to represent folks who don't necessarily agree with everything that you agree with. So how do you listen to, how do you represent constituents that have different thoughts and a different agenda?
The same way I do it now. I mean, that's not going to change because I'm governor. So David, the way I do it now and the way I'll do it as governor is that, first of all, it's okay that you and I might think differently. That's okay. We've lost the ability to say, that's okay, Dave, you do you, you know? Now, what I do now and what we'll do as governor is we have to listen first to understand. We have to extend grace and listen first to understand. And you and I can disagree on something, but it's my job to say, okay, Dave, this sounds like a really important issue to you. Can you tell me where you're coming from, why you believe what you believe? And then I'm going to shut my mouth and I'm going to listen to you. And then when you're done, here's where I believe we make a mistake right now in the outside world, is that we think it's our job to shove our opinion down your throat and vice versa. I need to thank you for the dialogue, and I need to take that information to weave a better community. I don't have to be right. I don't have to be right, and I don't have to agree with you, but I do have to hear you. So, you know, and I think that I've expressed that when you see me on the floor in debate. You know, I'm very pragmatic, and sometimes I'm like not necessarily on a side at all. I'm on the side of logic. I want to know what a bill does and doesn't do. And sometimes we get so involved in these hot button issues that we forget to talk about what's really important, which is the policy. Like, people are scared to be for or against something if it's a wedge issue, as opposed to, let's talk about the policy. It really isn't about the wedge issue. It's about whether this is a good bill or not a good bill. And then if I take what you tell me, I can say, okay, my concerns are having heard this from a constituent, having heard this from a Nebraskan. So for me, this us versus them narrative, I agree with you. It's killing this country. But if we participate in it, it's not going to get any better. But if we become active listeners, if we, again, extend grace and listen first to understand, I really believe that one conversation at a time, we can make a difference. And you can see that in how people have voted for me over the years. I live in a highly Republican area, and I'm a Democrat. But I can't tell you what my party platform is. I can tell you why I'm a Democrat, and people are usually surprised when they hear my answer. It has to stop being about party. It has to start being about the people. It has to stop being about politics, and it has to start being about the policy.
All right. Well, a policy question for you.
Sure.
Immigration is a federal issue largely, but it gets plenty of attention in Nebraska, despite the fact that we have no international borders. So in terms of the state's involvement in policy, what would be your priorities, your solutions, your ideas involving immigration?
Well, Dave, you're right. It is a federal issue. And it's a federal issue that maybe if they had knocked off some of this rhetoric, we would have had it resolved by now. When I have talked to governors from other states, when I have talked to especially our ag community, people want to see better immigration policy. They want people that want to come here and work to be here legally. And so if indeed we want to have people here to work and to be here legally, then we need to make sure that whoever sits in our executive branch helps to encourage our federal leaders to get off their butts and get something done about it. Because how long have we been hearing about this? For years and years and years. We know that our hospitality industry would fail without immigration. We know that our meat packing plants would fail without immigration. We don't have to look any further than the med center to know how important immigration is. You can't talk to healthcare professionals without bumping into somebody who is here from another country working. It's mandatory that we find a solution. We can't do it in state. It's got to be done at the federal level, but I think our leadership has to start talking about it in a way that people understand the important role and the magnitude of funds that are put into our coffers because of immigrants. It's an economic development issue. It's an issue of compassion, and it's an issue that's been allowed to fester because people have made it political. We can do better.
All right. So accusations of voter fraud have cast doubt on the election process in some places. What would you do if you were pressured to play a role in overturning an election? And are more protections needed, either on the side ensuring voter rights or on the side ensuring voter security?
You know, I've always thought that when we vote, it's one of the few times in our life that we're all equal. One voice, one vote. I am concerned that people don't trust government, not just in voting, but in general. Usually those that don't trust the process that we have for voting in Nebraska also distrust other branches of government. I certainly understand why they feel that way, because they feel their voices aren't heard, which we just talked about earlier, right? We know that we're not extending grace to people and letting them have their say so, and so they get angrier and more aggressive. And that's exactly what we're seeing. I don't think we have had anything that, for me, has been proven with data science facts that shows that we have had any type of fraud in Nebraska. If indeed we have had fraud, or we do have fraud in the future, that would be certainly something the executive branch would want to address. But I do believe in voters' rights. I don't think we should be making it harder for people to vote. I think that as Americans, we should make it easier for people to vote. I worry about things like we still have a generation of people that were born in rural areas that don't even have birth certificates. We have people with disabilities who may have moved and can't afford to get a new ID. I mean, that the fact of, I think of all the hurdles that we're putting away for voting, and I understand where people are coming from, but I don't know if I'm okay with people being excluded. And that's exactly what I see happening. I believe in one, again, one voice, one vote. I go back to the poll tax, and I feel like we're kind of going back in that direction. One of my very good friends, her mom was Evelyn Butts, who took the poll tax all the way to the Supreme Court. And that's not that long ago. I don't know if we realize we're going backwards in some ways. And I'm not sure that that's what people's actual intent is, because we're so mixed up in the rhetoric right now, the noise of it all. So I just hope, for me, I believe in voters' rights. I believe in removing hurdles, so people that are registered voters in Nebraska can actually vote. And I just have concerns that sometimes when we go off into the weeds, we do more damage than what we really intend.
Okay. The Supreme Court has Supreme Court ruling on abortion moves that issue back to the states, most likely. Describe your views on prohibiting, limiting, or allowing abortion in Nebraska.
I believe in a woman's right to bodily autonomy, but the bottom line is that, referring to our last bill, the trigger bill, that was a step too far. We are not doctors. Politicians are not doctors. We do not belong in those intimate environments. When we talk about abortion, we always have this picture of abortionists in our head, but really abortion is part of a woman's health care. And there's so much more to it than people understand. And again, because we're not doctors. So I always think of how important privacy is, respect. I mean, anytime we talk about anything medical, right? We talk about privacy, we talk about respect, we talk about dignity and support of that person. And that relationship is between the patient and their doctor. We don't belong in that doctor's office. And what I see as I start seeing the stuff come down from higher courts is that where is it going to stop? I personally don't want to live in a police state. That's why I live in the United States. If you look at the bills that have been passed, it literally depends on somebody snitching somebody off. And then that person, whether they committed the crime or not, then has to fight their way through the court system, potentially preventing them from going to prison up to 20 years. And if you read the last bill, it would have been per embryo. So that meant people, we always talk about how important life is, but apparently certain policymakers also want to choose how you conceive, because that last bill would have precluded IVF. They also want to tell you how you can prevent pregnancies. That last bill also addressed certain types of contraception that they didn't think was appropriate. So my concern is that right now in Nebraska, abortion is safe and legal. And we also have really, if you look at it, not everybody's going to get what they like, and you know, like it or not. We do have a good balance in Nebraska. We do have laws that pertain to abortion, and we do have we do have the ability for somebody to have some freedom when it comes to healthcare. I have grave concerns based on what I've seen in other states, especially when a woman has something like sepsis. When you have sepsis, every hour brings you closer to death. So imagine that your loved one is in an environment where a trigger bill, all or nothing bill has been passed. And in order for the doctor to treat that patient with the appropriate health care, they have to call the hospital lawyer first and hope that they actually reach the hospital lawyer on that first call. Well, this woman's life could potentially be slipping away. The fact that we didn't want to address rape, incest, we don't belong. We just don't belong in that room. If we open up that door, I hope people are prepared to understand that they're also likely going to start losing privacy in other areas. And is that a path you want to go down? Because quite frankly, again, I live in the United States because I don't want to live in a police state. I don't want to live in constant fear of people snitching off medical professionals who are only doing their jobs. We're going to lose OBGYNs. We're going to lose OBGYN students that come to our universities to be educated in this area. And people are going to die. And that is not something that I can agree with.
All right. As governor, your relationship with the legislature is an important one. As a senator, you probably have some thoughts on this too. And I might be able to guess your answer. Should the legislature scrap nonpartisanship?
No. But I will throw in a very quick story. When I travel and I meet lawmakers from other states, I'm always puzzled when we talk about, I'll have like a great bill that has been passed, like an interstate compact bill, and I'll be encouraging other states to do it. And they say, you know, I'd really like to do that bill, but I couldn't do it unless I got permission from the party whip. You know, the fact that you have to ask somebody permission to do a bill is crazy. Right now in our unicameral, if you want to bring a bill forward, you bring it forward. Every bill gets a public hearing, right? And every bill, if we did 10,000 bills, we'd have 10,000 hearings. The way the unicameral is, I think, is really a shining light. And until really recently, until big money got involved and rich families got involved, the unicameral ran quite nicely, and it did run as a bipartisan body.
All right. I have one question at the end, but
Mhm.
Kent leans forward because he knows this is his cue.
I can't.
Yeah, this is my time. I have a few specifics that let's start with the two giant water projects that were sort of semi-approved, whatever.
Sure.
What are your thoughts on those?
Pretty much the same as when you asked me last time. I'm really concerned. First of all, water is life. That's why I fought so hard for the folks in Meade, Nebraska, or Flint, Michigan. And so I know that, especially in a drought season, water is important to Nebraska. But with that said, the concerns that I have is that we have picked a fight with our neighbor. We know that there are federal compacts that we are going to have to fight in court for years if we push the canal project, which clearly we're going to. And I just feel like we could have gone about that in a better way. I'm not sure why we want to invest in something that we know upfront is going to have so many hurdles that we actually could have removed before the fact. And again, that's my I'm pragmatic about everything. Let's approach this in a way that we remove the hurdles so we can, really move forward in a timely manner. And then the concern that I have with the lake is eminent domain. And I have talked with a lot of concerned Nebraskans. I am not a big fan of eminent domain, and I think it's really interesting. We have so many people say they're against it. But it seems like anytime there's some people that can make money off a project, all of a sudden eminent domain sounds like a good idea. So that's my concern about the lake.
How about the need for a new prison beyond the idea of a replacement for the old penitentiary?
So I feel like it's more that we're trying to build our way out of the overcrowding problem, and that's not what's going to happen. That won't work. We'd have to build 3-4 new prisons to build our way out of this. We definitely need to look at our infrastructure. The pen is antiquated, and we may need to replace that. I agree with that part of it with a better facility, but the bottom line is that we have got to do something right now when it comes to the prison overcrowding, because if we don't start expanding our courts, like drug court, like veterans court. That veterans court's been really great in Nebraska, especially in my area, giving our nonviolent offenders an opportunity to do better, because we know one day they're going to be our neighbors. So pretrial diversion, we need to look at the sentences when it comes to nonviolent offenders. And then when they're incarcerated, we need to make sure that we actually rehabilitate them. We know that Nebraskans want to see people get punished, but those almost the exact same percentage of people think that we're also rehabilitating them, which we are not. And we really stopped doing that with that cutting that started like 25 years ago, as opposed to logical budgeting, having a plan. We just cut. And we need to make sure too that when they are released and hopefully rehabilitated, that we have better programs that integrate them into the community, because lots of times we're just putting them right back into the communities where they came from without the tools that they need to do better. So do I disagree that we need to build something? I disagree with what the purpose may be. And I feel that we have to do some serious addressing when it comes to how we eliminate the overcrowding in Nebraska, so we can compete with the states, and not compete, but so we can mirror the states that have had prison overcrowding as well, that we're able to close down institutions and lower the recidivism rate. That's a good use of taxpayer dollars.
And finally, and I will tell you, I too was born at St. Catherine's Hospital in McCook.
Hooray! All the good people are.
What are your thoughts on property tax and the general tax structure that it seems to have gotten so out of whack over the last 10 years?
Well, actually, I think it's been like 25 years. So, we've done a lot of things that I always like to remind people about. Like, I don't know if you remember when they had the Tax Modernization Committee. Do you remember that about 10 years ago? I have no concept of time. I'm going to say 10 years ago. It's really funny because they said, don't make tax policy in election cycles. When do we always make tax policy in Nebraska? In election cycles. And I don't believe we really have a three-legged stool anymore. You know, the one thing that I know, and I think I talked about this last time, is I know that the underlying cause of high property taxes is unfunded, underfunded mandates and not fully funding our schools. And we have known since Ben Nelson was governor, he had two different studies. One pertained to schools and one pertained to the counties. And both of the studies came back with the same results that said, you will never have lower property taxes unless you stop unfunded, underfunded mandates and fully fund the schools. Senator Deb Fisher had a bill. Senator Sue Crawford had a bill. Senator Justin Wayne, Senator Carol Blood. We've all had bills. And what's really interesting is that people always agree on the mic. Oh, you're right, property taxes are too high, but they will never pull the trigger on what really is the underlying cause, which are these mandates that we hand down. We know in counties like Sarpy County, halfway through the year, and I haven't had a chance to look because I've been so busy campaigning, but I do know that right before session got out, we were up to $10 million in unfunded and underfunded mandates. And I don't think citizens understand that, like in Johnson County, Tecumseh State Prison, the inmate dies, it's the county that pays for the autopsy. It's the county that pays for the grand jury investigation. So we have these small population counties with these mandates on them. Then we're a Dillon's rule state that says, here's the small amount of tools we're going to give you to pay your bills. And the number one thing that they're going to go to is property taxes. So the state keeps trying to cap them, and they do, but they want to cap them more, and pointing the finger at them when we're really the ones that are causing the underlying problem. So as governor, I want to see us, first of all, stop these mandates. I want us to see us reinstate our aid to local government. And then we have to slowly start reeling this stuff in. Because if we don't, no matter what we do, whether we talk about assessments, which is going to be what's next, because actually, don't you think that a county is going to be more open to working with us if we relieve that burden from them? More than likely. So, and I know from talking to them that it's very likely. But why would they want to juggle even more when it comes to their budget? We ask people to like tighten their belts and cut their budgets more. And, you know, I've been looking through the county budgets and they're very fiscally sound. They're not doing anything fancy with that money. So if we want to lower property taxes, if we want to address things like assessment, especially in ag, we've got to stop these mandates, and we have got to reinstate aid to local government, because we promised we were going to do that in the last recession. And now our coffers are full thanks to the federal government. And, you know, quite frankly, they're also full because they've been playing shell games with our tax dollars. So I'm hoping that people really stop listening to the same old story about how we're going to lower your property taxes. Because everywhere I go, when I ask people their property taxes have gone down and to raise their hand, like I think once I've had a person raise their hand. So like, how long are they going to be lied to? There's nobody with a magic potion, a magic bill that's going to lower your, there's nothing that's going to lower your property taxes until you do that.
All right, well, we are just about out of time, so I have to ask you the last question, but it's an easy one. What have we not asked you that you wish we had?
So I expect everybody to go to my website, electcarolblood.com, and they'll say, Carol, how are you going to get all these things accomplished? Here's how I'm going to get it accomplished. We're going to have a strategic plan for the state of Nebraska, a living, breathing document. I'm going to travel all over Nebraska. And by the way, when working men and women are actually available to come and talk to us, not during the day and invite only. And we're going to go to Chadron, and we're going to go to Alliance, we're going to go to McCook, we're going to go to Hastings, we're going to go to wherever, all over the state. And we're going to say, what are your priorities for your community? Is it bridges? Is it roads? Is it law enforcement? Is it mental health? Tell me what's important to where you live. Then we're going to take this data and we're going to bring it back to the legislature, and we're going to work with policymakers. We're going to work with nonprofits. We're going to work with the business industry. We're going to say, okay, let's narrow this down. Let's find people's priorities. And then we're going to mirror our budget to those priorities. Because I believe it's time to bring everybody back to the table when it comes to state government. So we are going to hear your voices. But what I like best about it is we're going to say, you know, Ken, what are they doing with our tax dollars? You're going to say, you know, I know exactly what they're doing with our tax dollars because I was at that strategic planning session and they're using one of my ideas. So then every year we bring it back to the public and we're like, this is what we've achieved. We haven't achieved this. We're going to tweak our strategic plan. We don't change it, we tweak it, right? And every year we report back to you. This is what we've accomplished. This isn't what we've accomplished. As a body, we're going to say, how do we make this happen? It hasn't happened yet. Why didn't it happen? And what I like best about it is the transparency is great. But what I like best about it is that it's a budget for Nebraska, not a budget for special interest, not a budget for party, but you're going to tell us what's important, be it childcare, be it workforce development, be it housing. And we're going to make that our priority and hopefully quiet down some of these silly bills that people keep trying to push through, but really have nothing to do with the quality of life and taking care of each other.
All right. Well, that was a rousing closing statement, Senator Blood. Thank you very much. And I think we hit 30 minutes just about on the button there. So
Good.
thank you very much. We wish you the best. And don't forget to fill out your questionnaire for the voters guide for the Journal Star too.
Oh gosh. Okay, I'm glad you told me that. I will get that done.
All right.
All right.
Done. All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, Ken. Bye, David.
Bye.